Clemson turned around what was a tough start to the 2023 year, but this year they open up with the Dogs, who are already a pretty big favorite. What's the mood around that game specifically to open up the season?
Well, it's just not the Georgia Bulldogs. The next week we play Appalachian State, who has a great ability of going into a massive stadium and winning when they shouldn't. We have NC State within the first 4 games with Grayson McCall, the great Coastal Carolina quarterback. And then we play, well, a team you might have heard of, the Florida State Seminoles, within the first 5 games. The first 5 games is brutal for us. And starting off in Atlanta, which is 45 minutes from Athens, Georgia, to play the Georgia Bulldogs, and they're ticked that they got left out of the college football playoff too. I mean, this is not a good feeling for me. Now, I have a lot of people telling me that I need to be hopeful, and I don't know if they're sprinkling some fairy dust on this thing and hoping for the best, but I really don't like that we're opening up the season against a team that has dominated college football for the past 3 years. But we will see how that turns out. But you guys, I mean, y'all have a pretty chill opening to get your team acclimated to the start of the football season. That's not the case for Clemson.
I'll tell you, it is daunting to think about, and I don't think it wasn't as daunting for Florida State the last couple of years, but I will tell you what a win like that does for the rest of your season. Florida State doing that twice against LSU, being an underdog both times, even when it was in Orlando, and really shutting down the Heisman winner and one of the most prolific offenses we've ever seen in college football. It does springboard you the rest of the way. And so, UGA is not LSU, but a win in that game, and people are already starting to pencil Clemson into the playoff. And so it is daunting for sure, but nobody likes UGA, so hopefully you guys can get it done.
Nobody likes them.
Cade Klubnik, highs and lows last year, ups and downs, finished a little bit better than he started, much like the team. Is there a confidence that he steps up this year and is a little bit better, or is there still kind of worry like, what are we going to get here? Where will we be when all of this dust settles?
I'm very concerned about his development. DJ Uiagalelei was the number 2 overall player in high school football when he came to Clemson. Things didn't work out well for him. Cade Klubnik, 45-0 in 6A Texas football, 2-time Texas Gatorade Football Player of the Year. He won 3 state championships, 2 as a starter. He comes into Clemson. He's floundering. We have a 4-star who's sitting behind him out of Alabama, who a lot of people thought would turn out pretty solid. He's not developing. You asked the question about Cade, but it really comes down to offensive player development. And right now, Cade has been behind an offensive line, and we just hired Matt Luke. We fired a guy that had only coached 2 years at Georgia State before this. He's a former Clemson player to be our offensive line coach. We had 4- and 5-star players on the offensive line, mostly 4-star, but we had 1 5-star that was on the offensive line that got knocked on his block by Georgia Southern. And you could say that's one play, but that's a great example of the offensive line play. And that affects a quarterback. It makes a quarterback stare down wide receivers. It makes a quarterback throw into double and triple coverage. Then you have wide receivers who can't block downfield. Clemson was wide receiver U, and good grief. We're far from seeing that. Cade is catching a lot of the criticism because he's the starting quarterback, as he should. But really what it comes down to me is player development on the offensive side of the football, and we have a major issue there. So right now, I'm like playing devil's advocate for Cade, but it just, to me, does not look good. The spring scrimmage, which everybody is talking about, spring practice really means nothing. The past 2 years, folks, accurately predicted the Clemson offense to a T. That included DJ, that included Cade. And I'm just a person who believes in history can be a great predictor of the future. So right now, I really don't feel comfortable with Cade, but there's really no one to take his place. We had a redshirt walk-on who came out and burned the woods up. But I'm telling you, with Dabo Swinney, the team would have to literally disintegrate before he put that kid on the field and give him a chance.
So when I was on your show, you asked me a little bit about the hope for DJU. And I'll tell you this, and I want you to rate it on how fair it is or how fair it isn't. Florida State fans, some fans of college football in general, say, well, yeah, DJU wasn't good at Clemson, but alluding to what you just kind of talked about, Cade's not been good and offensive development's not been good. So maybe DJ's not quite as bad as we think, and maybe Clemson's more the issue on the offensive side of the ball. Is that fair? Is the turnover there on the offensive side, the coordinators that they've gone through, how fair is that? Not to just totally excuse everything that DJ's done or put it all on Clemson, but maybe just tell me your thoughts around that.
I think it's, well, if you ask legacy Clemson media and you ask a lot of drive-by media heads who talk college football, the first thing they jump to is the transfer portal. That's the lowest hanging fruit in the world. Dabo Swinney's losing because of the transfer portal. If the transfer portal was our problem, I'm not saying that we don't need to use it here and there for supplementary players, but if the transfer portal was really the looming problem at Clemson, our defense would be terrible. But our defense is unbelievable, and really it's a tale of two teams. And what I mean by that is our defensive position coaches overall are well experienced, well tenured, multiple stops, even NFL stops for the vast majority of the coaching staff. That's the reason our defense hasn't fell off. We're only returning 2 or 3 starters from last year, and no one is worried about our defense, including myself. The offensive side of the ball, we have 2 coaches who played at Clemson, played in the NFL, never coached a day in their life, and now they're coaching at Clemson. The offensive line coach who was fired, I mentioned just a second ago, he played at Clemson. He had 2 years at Georgia State. We brought him on. He coached there for 2 years, fired him, had to replace him with Matt Luke in December. Garrett Riley, he just completed his first year in 2023. The guy before him was a former Clemson player. He did have a few stops at some small schools, but he came back. He was the quarterback coach for Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence, which, I mean, who wouldn't want to coach those guys? How do you mess that up? But the problem is, on the offensive side of the ball, we have very little, until Matt Luke, who was recently hired, very little experience in the coaching development realm. Why are we seeing Clemson look anemic, or maybe have a lack of identity on the offensive side of the ball? Why? It's because coaching does matter. Coaching matters, and Clemson's offense and defensive coaching staff proves that. And that leads me back to Cade. Cade has not been properly developed. DJ was not properly developed. He had too many first-timers around him, and that impacted the way that he plays. Now, does a player have skin in the game of their own development? Absolutely. I'm a guy who believes in taking personal responsibility. But if your leadership is like a lid and they clamp down and they keep you from progressing, you can only go as far as they can allow you to go.
Yeah. Expectations for Clemson this year. You feel like they have to make it back to the ACC championship? I mean, they're not going to fire Dabo if he goes 10-2 and doesn't make the ACC championship. But do you feel like that's kind of the threshold for where they need to get, so that there don't start to be whispers or rumors of like, hey, what are we doing here? 2 years in a row of not being there?
I think that if you give Clemson fans 10 wins, that buys more time. Clemson fans our fan base we are continuously being made to feel guilty for our expectations over the past few years, and the thoughts and our approach to winning at Clemson. And this became extremely evident on a couple occasions last season with Coach Swinney, who, by the way, I mean, the guy has 2 national championships, 6 consecutive college football playoffs, 12 consecutive 10-win seasons. Okay, yeah, that guy has done kind of good and stuff. But when you see the coaching hires, like I referenced just a second ago, and you see how our coach has become combative at times with the fans when questioned specifically about the things I laid out here, which to me just sounds like good logic, it kind of makes you wonder, where is he at mentally? Where is he at? And then because of that, where's it going to put the football team at? So there's factions in the Clemson community who hates my guts because I point out, hey guys, last year didn't have to happen. the way that it did. Going to a national championship and winning it every year? No, that's out of the question. I always come back to, in your losses, how did you lose? Who did you lose to? Was there coach malfeasance, as I like to call it? And last year we saw that. We saw losses because of poor development. So going back to your original question and trying to properly address it, I think for your regular Clemson fan, if you get to the ACC championship, 9 or 10 wins somehow, let's just say everybody beats up on one another for some reason, that will buy 2 or 3 more years, and that will be dangled over their head of just saying, you're spoiled, you're brats, you should have no expectation. Pay the man $11 million or pay his buyout of $62 million, I think it is. But I think we're at the place right now. I legitimately see, and I haven't done my official prediction yet for Clemson, I would not be shocked if we went 8-4 again for the regular season. At the same time, if we get some things together on the offensive line and get creative with our play calling, kind of like how Norvell is going to work with DJ and get the ball out of his hand quick, get the ball to the playmakers. We have some really good freshman wide receivers who are going to play for us this year. Bryant Wesco's already on campus. TJ Moore, who tore it up in the All-American High School Bowl. He looked great. He was unbelievable. But I have a gulp in my stomach, that small nauseous feeling when you start putting the weight of a season and a turnaround of a historically good football team, recent history, on 2 true freshmen. There's something about that doesn't sit right with me. And then a quarterback who's been running for his life for the past two seasons, basically.
We'll go ultra positive here. What's your boldest prediction? What's your hottest take for Clemson this year?
10-2. I believe Georgia's going to beat us. I mean, I would love for us to beat Georgia. Georgia fans are loud, they're rowdy, and it's for a reason. I mean, they'll tell you, we're rowdy, we're going to talk trash, we're going to talk about your mama, but they come out and they play football. And Kirby Smart's playing a different game than most people are playing right now in college football. I mean, he has set the bar. He was 3 points away from going to another national championship. I mean, he really was playing in the college football playoffs. So we know how Kirby Smart can coach. I don't feel good about our game with NC State right now. I think that Dave has always been a problem for us, even though they've beat us only a few times in the past 15 years. Y'all, of course, that's a dust statement. Playing in Tallahassee, I think there will be a scheme for DJ to play his best game against us. I think Norvell's going to give that.
That's what we're hoping, because the last time he played in Tallahassee, he beat us. So turnabout's fair play.
Yeah, I could see that. But my boldest take is somehow after Georgia winning 10 games. Yeah. And if we won 10 games and somehow stumbled into the ACC championship, I think that would be the best we could do. What's the worst we could do? I think that we could be staring down at an 8-4 season, and then 2 8-4 seasons in a row, not counting the bowl win. I think that I would call some people who's being ultra positive, and that turns them into ultra sensitive about criticizing Coach Sweeney. This time next year, they'll join the club and not be so happy themselves.
Brian, where can people follow you? Where can they find your work?
Yeah, absolutely. Clemson Football Live. I am on YouTube. So check me out. Drop a line. Let me know that you heard about my show from TJ here. And I look forward to seeing everybody. I like trash talking. I always like to keep it civil, but I love trash talking and having a good time.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you for joining me, man. Thank you.
TJ, thanks for having me on.